Good evening, and welcome back to Breathingspace, the quietest corner of the internet. I'm Sam. Join me Monday through Thursday every week for a relaxing podcast to help you wind down, de-stress, and drift off into the deep sleep you deserve. Tonight, lie back and listen in as we follow avid reader Afia, who sets aside her books for just long enough to realize that romance, adventure, and much nicer weather had been waiting for her all along in sunny Sicily. This is part 1 of Escape to Sicily. Hit the follow button now to never miss an episode. For years, it had been enough for Afia to lose herself between the pages of a book and escape the humdrum of daily life. Night after night, it had been enough for her to draw her curtains on the rush of the outside world, settle into bed, and leaf through pages filled with fantasy and crammed with adventures that drew characters across whole continents on quests that saw them questioning the very fabric of the universe. When one night, not so long ago, she had settled in for another evening and found that the words that wove themselves across the pearl-white pages before her simply weren't enough to stave off thoughts of tomorrow's 6 a.m. alarm, her morning meetings, or the birthday dinner with friends from school. She felt she hardly knew anymore. It came as rather a surprise. Perhaps this seems a sad start to our tale, but keep in mind that life is long and its path winding. For that night, as she set aside the book that, for perhaps the first time in her life, she simply couldn't find the energy to escape into, Afia's path through life was about to take a rather unexpected, rather wonderful turn. It was the stories that had helped her to maintain some sense of sanity in a city that had never felt like home. The characters that had fought for themselves just as much as they had fought for each other had given her the strength to turn up at a job that sounded impressive and seemed worthwhile to everyone but her each day. That night, as Afia sat sipping her tea quietly, she suddenly found herself wondering what her own story ought to be about, and where her own adventures might lay. For whilst the corner office with the panoramic view out over the city had been nice, she wasn't sure she wanted her story to end there. The longer Afia sat stewing, she began to think that perhaps her own story had yet to even begin. She had gone to school for good grades, learned the violin, and played volleyball at county level to help with her university applications. She had spent summers doing internships at law firms that had taught her far more about the morning coffee run and the importance of branded stationery than they had about a legal career. Without the scrawlings of someone else's stories to distract her, Afia found herself wondering which parts of her past she had really wanted, and which parts had simply been laid out for her. A perfect path for a perfect overachiever to walk down without question. Except now Afia did have questions, and lots of them. Afia had never had a big family, but the family she did have, she had always held dear. Fond thoughts of the grandmother with eyes as soft as her own, sipping tea brewed just the same way as hers, drifted through her mind. You're never more than one decision away from an entirely different life. She heard her grandmother's voice drifting through time and perhaps in through the open window on the other side of the room. Afia almost thought she could hear her own mother tutting in disagreement, or her father stifling a laugh. The family had always been close, but in terms of how to live, her mother and grandmother had always been at odds. The air in the room around her held perfectly still, as if beating Afia's breath for her. She rather got the sense that she was standing at a start line, and when she reached for her laptop, crashing through the stillness welled up between the walls of her bedroom, it was as though the starting horn had finally sounded. After far less deliberation than was truly necessary, several hasty clicks, and a phone call with an estate agent where Afia made use of the little Italian she spoke, she found herself the proud owner of one of Sicily's dollar homes. Afia's grandmother couldn't have been more right. From the moment she had made the decision to change course and buy the ramshackle, run-down home in a village the online listing described as all but abandoned, life had changed shape around her thick and fast. She had handed in her notice, feeling lighter than ever, as she walked out of the swanky corner office she had spent so long dreaming of as an undergrad. She had packed her bags and said her farewells. She sublet the apartment she had spent years decorating to the tastes of someone she wasn't quite sure she wanted to be anymore. And when the time came, she climbed precisely 28 steps to board flight AF 19876 from London to Palermo. It was 11 o'clock in the morning as her flight soared over the ocean that Afia ordered herself a mini bottle of champagne, popping it open and sipping slowly on the fizz in celebration. There were many years when Afia might have pulled a book out to pass the time, knowing a 4-hour flight was a long time to be alone with your thoughts. But as Afia sipped on the cool fizz, she realized that she didn't need to. For the first time ever, she was far too busy writing her own story. When the plane finally touched down in sunny Sicily, the crowded city that Afia had fled felt far off and forgettable. Standing at the terminal exit, it dawned on her that she had nothing to go home for. No ties, no responsibilities, nothing. Suddenly, she was rather grateful for the connections she had never managed to forge in the city. The one bed she had quietly hoped to share with someone special one day had stayed hers and hers alone. And perhaps if it hadn't, she might not have found herself climbing into the back of a taxi and asking to fix a fare to the village of Polina.